Proceedings, Maureen Kennelly, Director of the Arts Council. Big welcome for Maureen, please.
Good morning, everybody. How fantastic to see you. There's such a sense of enthusiasm and exciting. I know that we're all as giddy as hell, and rightly so, at the opportunity to be together. And how fantastic that the Minister has been able to be with us this morning. It's a really major red letter day for us. We're launching our spatial policy, the long-awaited spatial policy, which of course is guided by our 10-year strategy, Making Great Artwork. We are extremely excited about this policy. This policy is going to allow us to drive home the objectives of that strategy. And we've got a very simple and very beautiful vision in that policy, whereby we say our vision is for a country whereby everyone can create, enjoy, participate and engage with the arts, no matter who they are, where they live, where they work, what their background is. And we are committed to driving home that policy in the next few years. And that's why I'm particularly pleased that Minister Martin has been able to be with us this morning. I know that these are principles that she holds extremely dear, and that she and her colleagues are going to work with us so closely in terms of achieving that exciting ambition for the arts. Before I hand over to Minister Martin, I just wanted to pay tribute to our colleague Monica Corcoran, who has done stunning work in bringing this policy into life. And I know many of you know Monica, and say huge thanks to Monica and to our colleagues in the Strategic Development team. Thank you. So would you please join me in giving a very, very warm welcome to Minister Catherine Martin.
Cllr, it is truly wonderful to meet so many people face to face again now that our arts community can meet in person. Agus tá an áthas orm a bheith anseo anew. It is an honour to be here today to launch the new spatial policy at the 3rd Biennial Place Matters Conference organised by the Arts Council and Local Government Ireland. It is so wonderful to be able to attend this event in person after the last 2 years of virtual gatherings. The Places Matter conference brings together a range of people from different areas such as artists, architects, planners, community development workers, public policymakers and academics. Together, we can look at our common purpose to creatively address the future challenges of people and places and examine the role of the arts, culture and artists in influencing place-based topics such as planning, social cohesion, climate and the environment. This provides the perfect setting for the launch of the Arts Council's new spatial policy, Place, Space and People, because it is first and foremost about people and the places and spaces they live and work in. One of the many things the pandemic showed us is the complexity of defining place as being simply about fixed locations, and it has created the opportunity to reimagine the way we live, work and engage with each other in places and spaces throughout the country. This new policy by the Arts Council outlines how it operates simultaneously at national, regional, local, virtual or international level, and how that Council intends to be more responsive to place-based needs and opportunities in the future. The policy is designed to align with the key government planning and development objectives, particularly Project Ireland 2040 and other policies deriving from that, such as our Rural Future Rural Development Policy 2021 to 2025. It also connects significantly with climate adaptation policy and developing greener, healthier and happier communities. I strongly believe that there are excellent opportunities for existing infrastructure to be adapted or upgraded to reflect best practice climate adaptation while also meeting the evolving needs of artists and audiences. As a prescribed planning body, the Arts Council has a critical role to play in influencing planned development in the country and advising government on developing arts infrastructure. Whilst we are well aware of the huge value of embedding arts and culture as an integral part of sustainable growth and development, there are a number of ways in which the arts could play a more critical role, including architecturally ensuring higher quality, sustainable design of spaces and places for people to live, work and spend their time recreationally in, the revitalisation of small rural towns and underserved urban places through developing artists' workspaces in derelict or unused buildings. Integrated, climate-friendly, arts-based, community-led initiatives, as will be presented by the team from the Sweetwater Foundation Chicago at this conference later today, and bringing the creativity and vision of artists to bear in the broader public policy area. The possibilities are endless, and it is hoped the conference today will provide inspiring glimpses of some of those possibilities, not least the shortly to follow keynote address by architect Valerie Mulvin on the real creative potential of Irish towns. This policy builds on several decades of work by the Arts Council, which have sought to address geographic equity concerns. A socio-spatial equity policy is an active commitment to ensuring fairness and equality in our policies and how our resources are distributed. This policy will ensure that, irrespective of where we live, work and enjoy downtime, people can have real opportunities to engage in the arts as audiences, makers, creators and participants in a sustained way. Ultimately, this policy is about recognising the core inner creativity of every person and ensuring people can enjoy their cultural rights to give expression to that creativity and engage with arts and culture regardless of where they live. Again, this is something that the conference today will look at with exciting features such as the Irish Architecture Foundation and Dr. Cindy Joyce leading workshops on spatial justice, exploring equality issues around our designed environments and how much agency people have in determining the environments in which they live. The Arts Council Creative Place programme, which is also showcased here, is deliberately designed around the notion of place and providing meaningful and sustained creative growth and development opportunities for people in places that are underserved. This policy promotes a new approach by the Arts Council that recognises the need for different approaches and interventions in different places that respond to the specific needs of those places. The spatial policy is very much about cooperation and partnership. The Arts Council will build on its 37 years of partnership with local government, as well as working collaboratively with my department and other government bodies to ensure integrated investment of resources and that the power and potential of the arts is realised in other public policy areas. As such, it will perfectly complement the excellent work already being done by the department under the Creative Ireland programme. And so, here at this state-of-the-art arts facility in Carlow town, at a conference bringing together a range of place stakeholders, there really could not be a more fitting time or place to launch the Arts Council new spatial policy. Agus is mór an or dom a bheith anseo aniu gur míle maith agah.
Thank you so much, Minister Martin. I think the sense of passion and conviction that you bring to this is so obvious, and it's music to all our ears. And that sense of social justice and spatial equity rings out so clearly in everything you say. I want to say a huge thanks to you. The Minister has a very busy schedule today, so she's going to have to leave now. But I know this is her first visit to Visual Carlow. I know she'll soon be back again. So once again, will you please join me in thanking Minister Catherine Martin.
Thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Minister, and everyone very much appreciates the Minister coming here today and offering her support. It's a busy schedule. She's not able to stay with us, and she's going, but I think everybody really would like to express their appreciation for her coming here today. My name is John Masterson. I'll be with you through the day with a primary role because there's so much going on, and even what I saw yesterday afternoon, there's people getting absorbed in what they're doing. So to move you and to make sure people get in time to the sessions at Carlow College and the sessions at the Parish Centre, I'll be going around the place making sure that people get where they need to get at the right time, because it is just a feast of delights through the day. And as I said, yesterday afternoon was 2 hours of wonderful stimulation, and the people who were here on the stage They'd still be here on the stage if it hadn't finished. It was a terrific, terrific conversation. Now, I want to welcome to the stage a man who I have interviewed many, many times on the radio, a very, very fine Carlow public representative, Fintan Phelan, Cathaoirleach of Carlow County Council. Fintan, you could come up here, please.
Thanks, John. Can I start by thanking Minister Catherine Martin for attending the conference here today and taking the time to launch the strategy, a very important strategy here in Carlow. Deputies, elected members, Chairperson of the CCMA, Chief Executives, Director of Services, Arts Officers, Deputy Chairperson of the Arts Council, Director of the Arts Council, Maureen Kennelly, staff of the Arts Council and delegates. You are all very welcome to Carlow. It is a great honour for us here in Carlow to host such an inspiring conference between the Arts Council and local government in our magnificent venue that is visual. And I think you will agree that this reinforces our commitment to why it is important that we invest in the arts, in our people and our places. Carlow is proud to be the first town in Ireland outside of the cities to host the Places Matter conference. And I would like to thank all those people involved in making this happen. Carlow has a can-do attitude and punches above its weight on many fronts. We have a long trajectory of local arts development that places artists and communities at the forefront of our investment. Carlow benefits from being a small and diverse county, and we are characterised by having higher levels of interagency working, strong partnerships and collaborations in order to optimise our work and maximise the opportunity for Carlow and its people. We have a larger than average population of young people residing here and are recognised as an age-friendly county, a bilingual county, and we take a leading role in economic development, education, innovation and climate action under the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Carlow is proud to have 2 third-level centres of education and centres of excellence, including St Patrick's College across the way and IT Carlow, soon to be the South East Technological University. And when I speak about young people, I thought it was fantastic yesterday with the sun beaming down to see a mix of artists from all over the country chatting to and integrating with some of the young people from our local schools in St Leo's College and in CBS Carlow outside the green with the sun beaming down. And I think that's what this conference is all about. That's what supporting our local artists and supporting future generations of artists is about. And we are proud of our investment into artistic activity and development, such as this magnificent venue, the Carlow Arts Festival, Take Apart Carlow, and our new Creative Places Bagenalstown programme, among many, many other programmes which we are delighted are supported by the Arts Council. We are also delighted with the supports and the projects and guidance given by Creative Ireland programme over the last number of years. Carlow County Council Arts Service places community at the heart of its work. Our Arts Service champions place-based arts practice, which is rooted in community development ethos, such as the Take Apart Carlow project. The residents from the Tulla Road area of Carlow Town have participated in Take Apart over the last 5 years, and we welcome some of them here today. There are packs for each of you to take away which give voice to their valuable work. You can also see the reflections on this work in their own words in the lobby, which are very, very powerful. We welcome to the conference our very own local grown poet, Clifton Redmond, and musician Colin Broderick, who are both performing for you later, and indeed we welcome all artists whose work is shown here today in visual. We look forward to progressing our Creative Places project in Bagenalstown, a town in the south of the county, which is the accumulation of many years of work by the local community, supported by Carlow County Council and the Arts Council. The partnership between our council and the Arts Council has borne much fruit over many decades. We have come a long way working together to ensure a fertile ground for the arts to flourish and for our communities to benefit from the vibrant and cultural fabric which we have created together. I would like to thank the conference organising committee, led by Sinead O'Reilly, Head of Local, Place and Public Art in the Arts Council, along with our colleagues Emer and Monica. The staff of Carlow County Council, Kathleen Houlihan, our Chief Executive, Pat Delaney, Director of Services, and Sinead Dowling, our fantastic Arts Officer here in the county. And the Chair of the Arts Officers Association, Jenny Sherwin, and executive members, as well as Director of Visual Emma Lucy O'Brien, Paula Phelan, and all the front, in-house and technical staff here in Visual. County Carlow is an artistically rich county. Over the last 2 years, as we lived through the pandemic, the arts has continued to flourish, and we have responded with leadership, creativity and innovation. Indeed, all of you have responded likewise. The arts community were one of the hardest hit by the pandemic, yet you reinvented and continued to provide arts, the lifeblood of culture. We have many challenges ahead, not least supporting our friends from Ukraine. Welcoming new people to a new place reminds us why we need to invest in people and places more than ever. Places matter. I hope you all enjoy the conference, enjoy Carlow, and come away from here today with a deeper sense of why people and places matter and why our roles, collectively and individually, help shape welcoming ideas, places, local identity, and thriving communities in places like Carlow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Fintan Phelan. A county that punches above his weight, and I think we can all say, Fintan, a councillor who punches above his weight. He was one step away from claiming credit for the weather, and probably was partially responsible for the weather. So will you please now welcome to the stage Chief Executive of Kerry County Council and representing the County and City Management Association, Moira Murrell.
Good morning. Cathaoirleach a KEYNOTE Cllr. Tá mé an ggógáil anúmh thar ceann rialtas á túla agus tá mé anasásta bheith an seo. Tá imeachtaí atá leagh amach anna ábhartha fé láthair agus tá go gardachas tiltte gach duine mar atá go leor ibre I gceist le an cógáil sin. So I'm very pleased to represent the local government sector here today on what is an important day for the arts and very much with the launch of the new strategy. As a CCMA and as a local government sector, on behalf of that sector, I engage regularly with the Arts Council, obviously with Maureen and Sinead and Liz. And an awful lot of work goes into the planning and how we cooperate and how we work together. And there's a very strong sense that what we're doing is to do the right thing by our areas and for each of the people. A lot of you represented here today and a lot of you who are delivering on the ground as well. And there's a huge commitment, and I welcome very much this policy because it gives us a structure, it gives us a plan, and we're constantly looking to areas where we can work together, where we can collaborate better and more to deliver actively on the ground. There's a few things I just wanted, there's 4 points, and I'm very aware I've 5 minutes and I don't want to overrun my welcome. I suppose the first thing I would say is that the structure that's in place between local government and the Arts Council, where we can see the national level, the Arts Council, local government working together, it's a model that has proved itself, certainly in the area of the arts, and many other areas of delivery have taken on this structure. And I think that when you look at through the pandemic, and I will have to mention the pandemic, and even when you look at the moment when, you know, which our Ukrainian refugees coming to the country, that model seems to be a model that can work very well, where you have the national, the agencies, and that interagency coordination by local government seems to be a model that is particularly working. So I think that model and that framework for collaboration that's there with the Arts Council is a very important structure to help us in a structured delivery locally. The second thing, and I suppose just the Cathaoirleach mentioned it in the context of the pandemic, I think the arts, it showed that rather than just an appreciation of the arts, we can see the central and focal point that the arts have played in our society when the normal processes, when the normal social structures were not there or could no longer be operated. We saw the arts coming central and so central to us as a society, to our operation from old right through to the youngest member of our society, and really playing a part in our well-being and our functioning as a society. And I think that's a learning we need to keep with us and take with us as we move through, that critical importance and central role that the arts play. The third area refers to the Minister referred to the whole, the national policies, the regional policies, right down to our local policies. There are huge works and huge planning going on, as you will all be aware, and central to in many areas, around the whole regeneration of our towns and our villages, as facilitated through various grant schemes, urban regeneration funds, rural regeneration funds, policy Our Rural Future. And it has enabled us at this point, and I would say unprecedented, funding and opportunity for us to actually reimagine, and the Minister used that word, reimagine our urban spaces. I have seen numerous projects coming in right across the country, and within and integral to those, reimagining our spaces is a place for the arts, and creating the arts as central to many of the reimagined spaces. And as I look, and as we present here today, I think it's a great example that when you have that reimagining, what can be achieved. So, it really is an important time, and it's great to see that in conference and being discussed here today as well. The third, the fourth area and the final area, I suppose as well, is just to reference the role that local government has in the coordination of communities. And I referred to that earlier. But when you see the level of coordination, and level of community planning, which happens at this point in time through our local communities, be it through the LCDCs, through Corlin and Oak, the PPN structures, I could go on. And when you talk about the local and community planning and our plans that are there, you can see the opportunity that's happening for diversity, and that opportunity that's there to facilitate that bottom-up planning, that community planning, that of course is a place where the arts grows and fosters as well. So very quickly, I'm delighted to see that the conference today. I love an awful lot of the stuff I see in the programme, that ability to learn from the best, and it's great to see the Sweetwater Foundation in there. The focus on rural, I'm from Kerry, I like a focus on rural, that helps. A focus on placemaking, and I suppose when you look at the placemaking at the moment, whether you're a local authority, whether you're the Arts Council, whether you're Enterprise Ireland, Fáilte Ireland, or the IDA, everybody is recognising the importance of placemaking. So from an arts perspective, I'm really, really delighted to see that focus on placemaking today. I love to see the local focus, I would say that, coming from local government sector. I see the collaboration, a lot of focus today around collaboration, that national, that regional, that local, that community integration, hugely, hugely important. And also the fact that this is community-led. So finally, Bhuala mo Fearghus Ó Maureen, Kennelly, agus a Fern Lauder, agus gachrod yenin shiffer son and Eileen, agus ig ober Lynn, le na realtas all tula. Grib mila mahagwib, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Moira. I think everyone at the conference will be very pleased to be hearing the cooperation between local government and between the arts community. It's very heartening, and I suppose it's what everything is about here. And could you please welcome back to the stage now Maureen Kennelly, Director of the Arts Council.
Thanks, John. Good morning again. Lovely to see you again. And just to reiterate the welcome that we made this morning, it's really so fantastic to see so many here at Places Matter. And as many of you know, this is our third biennial conference. The first was in Dublin Castle, where we talked about what happens when we invest in the arts. The second then was in Galway, where we looked at building inclusion in the arts, and we launched our equality, human rights and diversity policy there at that time. And then here we are in this beautiful setting, and we're exploring people, places, space and the arts. And just to acknowledge the backdrop against which we're here today, the fantastic Tom Dowling exhibition, There's also the Christopher Steenson Sound Exhibition. There's Take Apart Carlow. And just reflecting on Visual Carlow and how far it has come since its inception, I think it was 09 or 10, around then when it was first opened. And to think about the impact that this has made in the town and in the environs of Carlow. So I'm thinking back to the fantastic Emma Martin United Falls show, Night Dances, which many of us were lucky to see at Dublin Theatre Festival last year. Thinking about Carlow Arts Festival, thinking about all the filmmaker Tadhg O'Sullivan, who's based here on the board here, I believe, but all the many things that have happened over the last 11 or 12 years that simply could not have happened without visuals. So just to say a huge thanks to the team here and to salute the wonderful work you do, Emma, Lucy and to Paul and the rest of the brilliant team. Thank you for making us so very, very welcome in your very special space. So as Moira referred to, we've come a long way with the local government over the last 37 years. 37 years ago, the first ever arts officer was appointed. That was Kay Sheehy, known to many of us now as producer and sometime broadcaster in RTÉ on Arena. And Ireland's obviously a very different place. When I think about those, Rita Ann Higgins' line, Ireland is changing, mother, always comes into my head. What a vastly different landscape we're operating in now. And of course, back then, 37 years ago, Ireland was in the depth of a recession with huge unemployment and emigration. And back then, it was only 60 years since the formation of the state, so we were still quite a young country. Indeed, we still are. We were, to a certain extent, really struggling for our identity. But reflecting now this year that the local government and that the Arts Council will jointly invest 170 million euros into the arts. And that's kind of a breathtaking statistic when we reflect back. And that's one that obviously all of you and many, many others besides have been working on for decades. And this is a historically high level of funding that we in the Arts Council are determined to maintain and indeed to build on in years to come. We know that it's not yet at the appropriate level, but we're certainly edging there, and that gives us great cause for optimism. This year is significant in many other ways. We're 100 years into the formation of the state. It's 124 years since the formation of local government. In the Arts Council, we're 70 years old. And we're still trying to emerge from a pandemic. And of course, we're in the grips of a humanitarian crisis, which has never been seen by us before. And we're welcoming many, many more people to an increasingly diverse Ireland. And in all of that timeline, against all those happenings, culture and the arts has helped to define us, to hold a mirror up to us, and it's given us expression and reflection over many points in that interesting and colourful past. It's helped us to see how much better we can be and how much better we should be. And the powerful reflections that hopefully you've seen on the way in here from Take Apart, from the community in the Cllr Road, remind us of how much better society can be and what our role is in shaping that. Today, as we collectively take that deep dive into talking about people, places and the arts, and asking ourselves, indeed, why do places matter? We will remember how far we've come. We have pride in what we've achieved, but critically, we remember what we still need to do better. And in doing so, we're going to take inspiration from artists. And with confidence, we'll take bold new strides forward in order to achieve social justice and to achieve spatial equity. The Arts Council is committed to a proactive and focused approach to guaranteeing that everybody who lives in Ireland has the opportunity to engage with and participate in the arts. And that's very much enshrined within our spatial policy and also within our equality, human rights and diversity policy. And they cut across every single thing that we do in the Arts Council. And we're so pleased to be able to work with you in achieving those ambitions. I want to say thanks once more to Monica Corcoran for her great work in terms of the spatial policy. And I want to pay tribute to Deirdre Behan, our Strategic Development Director, for her terrific work in this area. We know that social and spatial inequities and injustices exist because of historical and prevailing structures that continually compound it. But we're determined to remedy that. And today you'll hear about new approaches, active learning, the mistakes that have been made, about testing new ground and challenging old ground. Why do places matter so much to us, and how do people make places? Art certainly doesn't have all the answers, but it's got lots of questions. And it's got questions that will allow us to open new doors to new narratives, to new possibilities, new probabilities, and critically to new voices that have previously been unheard, underheard, overlooked, and simply sidelined. And places have been absent from the map, and we are absolutely determined to remedy that and to fill those gaps. I want to say a huge thanks to my own team in the Arts Council. I'm almost 2 years into my role now, and I have a huge sense of excitement and pleasure at actually meeting many of my colleagues over the last few days. So that has been terrific. And it's also been fantastic to meet Moira Murrell, with whom I have shared several Zoom calls. We're meeting in person for the first time today, and Marina Duffy, and many others besides. In putting together this conference, Sinead O'Reilly has done sterling work, and she has been ably assisted by Emer Kelleher and Monica Corcoran. So I want to say a huge thanks to you and to the rest of the Arts Council team who have worked so energetically and imaginatively in putting this together. I want to say once more thanks to Carlow County Council. It's just fantastic to have the opportunity to visit and to see your county at its finest. And to the conference steering group for all the great energy and time you gave to it, and to the production support team in Davis Events, and once more to the team in Visual Carlow here for all your warm welcome and for your terrific work. And also, of course, to the speakers and contributors and to the artists. And it's you who are so immersed day in, day out in people and place. We're so looking forward to hearing all that you'll have to share with us today. Yesterday afternoon, we had a terrific session with Creative Places Tuam, and a number of things resounded particularly with me. One of the speakers talked about the choreography of the town and how Creative Places Tuam had changed the choreography. And somebody else made the suggestion that the major impact of Creative Places Tuam so far was that it increased the morale in the town, that the morale was higher. And I thought, my God, that is absolutely amazing. Look at the work we can do to hear that the morale of a town is improved by the arts. I can think of no better benefit. So that's extremely exciting for us to hear those testaments about what the arts can do, and to know that we're travelling in the right direction with you all, that a programme like Creative Places really does matter, and that we have 8 new places that came on stream last year, and that we have a deadline coming up in the next few weeks, so that we'll have more places coming on this year. So that is just so terrifically exciting to all of us in the Arts Council. So very finally, Valerie Mulvin will be speaking to you shortly. Valerie has a terrific book, I can't remember the full title, Approximate Formality, Morphology of the Irish Town. And just one line in particular struck me as being just terrific and really being maybe a manifesto for today. So Valerie says, "The town in the final analysis is nothing more nor less than a backdrop to the wild opportunism of life." And as an optimistic manifesto for today, I can think of none better. So thank you so much to everybody for being here. We're so looking forward to meeting you during the day. And I'll hand you now back to John. Thank you.
Maureen, thank you so much. Isn't it great not to be Zooming? That really was Maureen. Now, to move on, Maureen has mentioned our next speaker. It's Valerie Mulvin. And Valerie is an architect. She's a director of McCullough Mulvin Architects and the author of Approximate Formality, The Morphology of Irish Towns. And this is really Valerie.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to be part of the Places Matter conference and to weave it into a conversation about the importance of places we live in and the absolute imperative to develop their creative potential. What I'd like to do is to set a context for the idea of Places Matter, and to set the scene, here's a few sentences from one of our great present-day writers, Kevin Barry, from a blackly humorous short story, Ideal Homes. And I quote, "The village was an unimpressive tangle of a dozen streets. There was a main street and a square, one as drab as the other, and a woeful few streets subsidiary to these.
There was an insignificant river, brown and slow, and granite hills beyond. These, it was said, gave the place a scenic charm, but in truth, it was forlorn. The people were terraced in neat rows and roofed in with grey slates, and were themselves forlorn, but they wouldn't easily have said why. Quote, now that, to me, described the world I grew up in, where Irish towns seemed hopelessly dull and excitement was elsewhere. So what has changed? And a lot of it has to do with the phenomenon that the pandemic enabled. We all realised we could work remotely, and that helped many people realise they could also reimagine their lives. There was a sort of a plague year feeling that cities should be abandoned because they were unsafe, and huge numbers of people simply went home and realised they could not only manage there, but they could thrive. And suddenly, in a unique moment, people could see these towns gave all the intimacy and potential of a neighbourhood where you could live a rich and gentle life. People quickly saw small towns offering less expensive property, little in the way of a commute, and best of all, the sense of arriving into an instant environment and finding there all the elements you need. And taking a cue from IAF's Carlow project, The Subtle Craft of the Street, I'm going to talk a bit about Irish towns. Our conversation today has to involve a shift from global to local. Current happenings to our east ask questions about how we live, the new necessity for securing our fuel and food supplies, and the urgency of climate change has given that debate a pressing immediacy. Last year, my pandemic project was to finish a book, Approximate Formality, and what I became obsessed with was the extraordinary planimetric clarity of these towns, the politics and the history that resulted in many of them being laid out all at once to a predefined plan, and uncovering their stories, often from very inauspicious material on the ground. Made in various colonial situations, the strange apartheid this perpetuated undermined their amazing achievement from a cultural and architectural point of view for a long time. So I've been working on towns and town plans in Ireland, exploring their originality, potential, rigorous layouts, so they can be understood as not just local, but as part of world culture. And this is research that connects everything together, which says there's a tradition of building towns in this country. It's important in the canon of art and architecture. It has a particular spare character, which is totally unique in its level of formality. And that derives from its geography and history. And it's important for us to use these places now and take them with us into the future. But before we can do that, we need to really understand their essence. So if you take this slide of Templemore from the 1950s, what an extraordinary image this is. And yet, we totally take places like this for granted. We haven't negotiated a language to celebrate their formality. Instead, we make cultural space like this into car parks. And if you talk about cultural spaces, I don't think we can talk about how to make places matter without understanding why a place is the way it is. Placemaking is a concept much talked about these days, but in my opinion, it's often just a recycling of unoriginal, everywhere gestures. There's little appreciation of what's actually there on the ground. We need to be open-eyed, to have deeply observed, to have listened to the forms and spaces, to have soaked up why a town is the way it is. What made those curious corners? Why is that building line staggering from one position to another? How is the delicate tissue of materiality made up, and why has it developed in that way? The built fabric tells a story we have to learn to read. It's as important and descriptive as the wrinkles on a face. It's a story amplified by maps and archival sources. Cultural space, that is, charged with history and marked with time. And incidentally, it has no legislative protection at all. We have to take that on in rethinking them, as we need to protect these cultural spaces for future generations. Many towns aim with the best intentions to improve, but reach for the catalogue of traffic bollards, lampposts, cobbllock, seats, hanging baskets and parking bays, and the latest, plastic sticks for cycle lanes. In other words, leaving the status quo and tinkering at the edges. Instead, we have to ask, what's interesting and original about each place? What makes its character? What's its genius loci? So I've tried to chart this tradition of making collective spaces for living and trading, starting with early towns around the monasteries and finishing just into the 20th century, when J.M. Synge and Jack Yates were asked by the Manchester Guardian to travel through the congested districts of the western seaboard in 1904 and record their impressions. Synge writes about Belmullet, with a St. John's Eve bonfire in the main square. Streets in the evening, he says, are noisy and squalid, lonely and crowded at the same time. A gramophone in one house, a fiddle in the next, then an accordion and a fragment of a lullaby, with many crying babies, pigs and donkeys. The effect is not indistinct. That's a stark contrast to today. We've gone from congested districts to empty, unused towns. But to go back a little in time, I'd like to talk about what are the qualities of small town life in Ireland at different periods and how are they supported by the built environment we've inherited. I'm very focused on the idea that if we could re-inhabit these towns properly, not only could thousands of people be rehoused, but they could create the best possible cultural spaces of the future, because those spaces would be inhabited by people, like the wall of faces in a theatre. Towns are our theatre of the everyday. These are some early maps of Carlow. They're oriented, so they're all in the same direction. The Thomas Molan Plan of 1703, the Columbine one of 1735, and the first Ordnance Survey of 1837. The crossroads street pattern and many of the property boundaries go right back to the 13th century. Hence the amazing castle protecting the river crossing, 3 town gates to protect those inside from the wild Irish, and this is all founded in 1205. You don't see much obvious medieval fabric in Carlow in this Lawrence photograph, but it's literally built on the framework laid out in the 13th century, and it epitomises the best of small town life. And in our rethinking of towns, we have to include all this richness and history and geography as part of our understanding. It explains the ambition and pragmatism of the plan, why the castle is where it is, and strangely, the castle is the biggest thing in the town, but it's somehow been left out of people's mental map because development has ignored its essence and left something out along the way. And when you look at medieval towns, the feudal system in Ireland has its own architecture. It's a kind of mathematics crossed with a family tree. This town plan in Clonmel is set out all at once. It's the simplest way to divide a parcel of land economically, a street grid laid out on a plot of land with a tiny frontage to the marketplace and the church in a square by itself. You see many variants of these types, very geometric, like Buttevant, or approximate, like Kilmallock. They're all about a pragmatic organisation giving the maximum number of people access to a marketplace. And the amazing thing is the persistence of a lot of the property boundaries set out in the 13th century right to the present day. These are beautiful organisations, inventive shapes which reflected needs, trumpet-shaped marketplaces like Thurles and Fethard. And in a way, medieval towns like Galway have come through our difficult history the best, the complexity and layering of the first on the ground. They're most obviously within the European canon of urbanism, and we've forgotten the Normans and their exclusion of the Irish. This drawing from 1583 describes Galway's beautiful formal qualities, walled and gated, a grid of streets dividing to go to the port around St. Nicholas Church, and outside the walls, the 2 abbeys conferring blessings, but also linking natives and invaders under one god. New people had made a beautiful thing, a whole grid-planned town, but it was in contested territory, so it needed a wall, just like the rest of Europe at the time. And at the same time, those comfortable medieval towns excluded those who'd been there before, and at best agreed to a marketplace or a fair green, an Irish town, at the gates. So this is the Faith in Wexford. It's a built form of that apartheid, which continues the duality of conversations about towns in Ireland, which really the Vikings began when they settled in beside the monastic towns. Our complex history, particularly during the plantations, makes us slightly culturally ambivalent to towns and what they represent. So this slide of Fort Protector and the town of Maryborough, just across the county border in Portlaoise, from the 1560s, shows the mark of colonisation like the branding on the landscape. And its inevitable consequence, of course, is the displacement of peoples. The plain fact was, towns were used first to hold territory and then to turn a profit. Sir Edmund Spenser, who's famous to us all for the Fairy Queen, 16th century poet and planter, advised Queen Elizabeth I to fill the landscape with, I quote, English inhabitants of all sorts, as merchants, artificers and husbandmen, to whom there should be charters and franchises granted, so would it in a short space turn those parts to greater commodity and bring to Her Majesty much profit, for those places are so fit for trade and traffic as I've seen exampled in Maryborough and Phillipstown. And he's talking about Portlaoise and Dangan, part of the Laois Offaly plantation of the 1560s. So British colonial policy in Ireland always justified wholesale land transfer by their mission to civilise the wild Irish and their moral imperative to improve, which scarcely concealed the profits being exported across the water. So Irish clans were drummed out of their ancestral towers and monasteries, but in Ireland there are always 2 points of view. Plantation is difficult and expensive, and under James I, globalisation began to fund political ambition. Much of the Ulster plantations were funded by the London companies, guilds of merchants, skinners, salters, vintners, who used their wealth and expertise to found towns, becoming development agents in the north, much as the Virginia Stock Company and East India Company worked in America and India. They did very well out of the bargain, and they set up some of the most successful towns of the plantation period, like the early 17th century Cllr, which was a trial piece for Derry, a grid of streets, marketplace and a port on the river. Everybody's familiar with the savagery of the plantations and the cruel translation of populations. The whole country was a laboratory, really, for English experimentation on their Irish subjects. But while the plantation towns may have been hammered out military statements on the ground, we do have to recognise these towns were also ambitious statements. They were grounded in Renaissance thinking about urban space across Europe and the New World. They had axial relationships, centralised grid plans, triangular spaces or diamonds. And these towns grew and thrived and became viable spaces. Towns are very political statements, like this shot of Derry, famous image of a walled grid plan town with a cannon in the main square, excluding and defending. But the fact was there were never enough transplanted people to totally reimagine the country. So Irish tenants farmed the land, paid rent, and sometimes even occupied the town streets in their own cabins, maintaining that strange apartheid that we talked about, that maybe the Vikings began. And they did thrive, and they did become warm, comfortable towns like this one in Lisburn. And as the warlike 17th century was recast into the more enlightened 18th century, it's worth remembering in just the same way that numbers of planters were never sufficient to flood the country. The next generation of towns were actually built by ordinary Irish people in a grudging, symbiotic contract of sorts with their landlords. It's a story that's rarely celebrated. They built all the shops and sheds, all the walls which make the spatial containers we now recognise as towns in Ireland, and that's a really proud fact. More peaceable times allowed landlords to make their biggest investment, not their houses in the main, but their new towns, sometimes very joined-up experiments underpinned by brilliant ideas to improve agriculture, promote new industries like linen, and of course the rental income from their tenants. Here's a failed but ambitious town. The Ordnance Survey engineers mapped Stratford-on-Slaney in the Wicklow Hills as two formal spaces, an oval and a circus, and a cross-axial street linking church and meeting house above the manufactory on the river. While this remarkable plan was certainly the formal plaything of a privileged class, its geometric and spatial expression was full of architectural ambition, innovative in European urban design terms. Now Stratford is hardly a village, but imagine if people were to fill these amazing spaces now and build back that intended outline. And not all promoters of new towns were landlords either. This is Portlaw in Waterford. It was a philanthropic enterprise built by the Quaker Malcolmson family for their mill workers, with all life radiating out in streets from the factory gates. And there are a huge number of towns which are simply themselves linear towns or a neat array of buildings around a square. These are great examples of empty and full spaces, Moy and Rathdowney here. The market condition is what they were created for, and it explains iron railings on windowsills to keep the cattle off. They're exactly the equivalent of Italian, French and Spanish squares we all enjoy, but they're just not recognised yet. They need to be treated properly as total outdoor rooms. Mitchellstown is a wonderful example of a complex set of spaces being achieved in 3 dimensions over several generations using the rolling topography of the hills to generate visual cross-axes and surprising views. Tilted plane of the Market Square, the sharp geometry of King's Square, axial relationships between 2 churches at right angles. And this slide of Westport shocks us with its paucity of materials, its broken down character. It reminds us how tenuous the whole enterprise was and how much of a risk these entrepreneur landlords were taking. The houses are crazily heading downhill towards the first of those amazing terraces, the hubris of the Earl of Altamont on his column in the middle of the broken structures. It's an absolute miracle from here to Westport being probably the foremost 18th century town in Ireland. So in quick summary, as an architect, I'd say that the first and most important quality of Irish towns is their form, the space defined by a wall of buildings. And that form, as I said before, is also the least protected in our planning legislation as an entity. In France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, there's an understanding of public space, of street and wall surfaces being continuous. Design isn't showy, it's deeply embedded in the place. There's a seamless understanding of materials. Architects are trained in these matters to get it right. In Ireland, we've lost a sense of our town's value as bright, brilliant public spaces. We didn't believe in them to the extent of paving them properly or designing them as simple, beautiful spaces and getting the cars out of the centres. We've huge amounts of underused buildings in small towns that need to find uses. Often the most appropriate is housing, and we need to balance conservation with sustainable social values. So we need a project of recovery to find ways of bringing life back into these towns, and that has to take on the idea of a place. Post-pandemic, remote working and a cosmopolitan population who've travelled the world could allow us to view our towns through a more hopeful lens. However, it needs a huge change in mindset from a lot of official Ireland. We need to occupy the shops as homes at ground and upper floors, use old factories as houses and workplaces, develop new paradigms like loft-style living, or dividing up different floors across different plots for different families. Take a look at this building in Lahinch, for example. It's a hotel, a bakery, a bar and a house. There's a yard behind for animals, all under the one roof. It's multivalent. And it's that kind of complexity we need to be getting back into our towns. Government produces lots of policies and papers to support all I'm saying today, but not enough work is going into clearing the logjams created by the same government's regulations. Fire officers who run their own fiefdoms and impose beyond regulatory standards. Planning officers who should be targeting things to make their local area plans work. That means knowing exactly who owns what on the ground. Conservation officers who should support radical approaches which respect materiality and form. Insurance companies who won't insure anything but the most standard situations. Banks who won't lend to support more flexible means of occupying buildings and models of ownership. People do this all over Europe. I think local authorities could fast-track this by doing a series of targeted pilot projects in towns, publicising them well and giving them some grant aid. There are lots of hugely talented architects, young and old, who would love to be involved in this kind of project. So I've just hinted at a context for these great spaces to support their sustainable reuse for the 21st century, so people can live well in them again, appropriate new things can happen, streets can be filled up and upper floors inhabited. It would be wonderful to provide the thousands of new homes we need to enliven these instant environments. It does need an understanding of what's important so we can conserve and add to them innovatively. And I say this because we've been comprehensively wrecking the places since the 1960s. And this, next slide, this is Mount Rath as it was in the 1950s, salutary tale. And I just wanted to show a brief clip in a second from a 1962 RTE programme called Broadsheet. The 18th century market house, which you can see in the middle of the town here, built on arcades, had become derelict, and RTE's Lila Doolan canvassed local opinion about what to do. To some a dangerous eyesore, to others a historic building. Can we just run that film clip for a few minutes?
This is a pleasant looking building?
I think this is awful. All tourists come here, ask what is the awful sight on the street.
You wouldn't be for restoring it then, would you?
Well, there's no one asking to restore it, you see. Nobody has proposed to restore it. In town.
You would therefore be for pulling it down?
Yes, definitely.
You don't think it would be more to the town's credit to attempt to restore it, since it wouldn't cost too much?
Well, it's for the last 20 years it's like that, and nobody has asked to restore it.
Do you think there's any valuable function the market house could fulfil if it were preserved?
I think there is, because we have a young farmers club here and they're looking for commercial homes, and if that is put right, like, and done up, I think it'd be an ideal place for them, you know. And they say it's a cause of traffic, but I'm in town now I was reared actually in town, and I've never seen an accident there.
Would you demolish the market house if you had your way?
Oh, I would. I think it's dangerous to traffic, and it has an eyesore to the town, and it interferes with driving a lot.
I've heard it said that in fact it acts as a safety device to traffic in that it slows it up. Would you agree?
I wouldn't, because there's a corner there that would slow down the traffic anyway, and I can't see any reason why anybody would want to leave that in the middle of a town.
You don't think that it could be a centre for dances or social occasions and things like that?
I do, definitely. I think it would be marvellous.
And lastly, if you had your choice, what would you put in place of the market house?
A shrine, I think.
That was a shrine, was the last word. So the building was pulled down and buses were able to circulate unimpeded, and the town lost its centrepiece. And actually, I was there recently just doing some filming, and in fact, it's now become a kind of a roundabout for juggernauts who are avoiding the tolls. But to finish on a positive note, in March 2021, during the pandemic, the Irish Times asked 4 architects, including ourselves, to speculate about outside spaces. And we chose Mount Rath. And this slide here is Neil McCullough in our office worked with Emma Cooney to make this image intended to show how things could be. The town as an urban and social theatre, partly new and partly reused, reusing all kinds of disused frameworks of circulation and habitation. The old buildings become valued resources. All the upper floors around the square are occupied. The space is repaved in an interesting and simple way. The Market House is rebuilt exactly on its original footprint as a contemporary cultural building of a new type, a public hall over an open market and party space. There's also development in the backlands, people building new houses and gardens behind the main facade, adding density and interest to the experience of the town. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valerie. And I'm reminded of what's written on the wall down there, that art starts conversations, and I think we can safely say architecture starts a lot of conversations too, and that is a book that I will certainly acquire. It was fascinating to see the walls, when so much of yesterday's conversation was about taking down psychological walls. And to continue, we're moving on to our first piece of a different type of art. I'm also reminded, Valerie, of your 5-point plan that our politicians need to have written on their desks. Thank you very much for that. Our first artistic intervention today comes from a Carlow man. He's a poet. He's a keen observer of the place where he lives, and this was commissioned by Places Matter by Carlow County Council. You are the first audience to hear this poem. Please welcome Clifton Redmond with This Place Matters. Big hand for Clifton Redmond. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Clifton. This is a poem about the Cllr Road. It's called This Place Matters. Maybe that'll be higher there, yeah. Give me a dead rat crusting on a cracked footpath. A crowd of crows acting shifty round its tattered carcass. Give me a morning after rain, tired tarmacadam painted darker. The smell of petrichor. A Subaru Impreza with the scar of a key scratch along its once beautiful body. Give me colliding walls of red brick and pebble dash, washing lines of hijabs and high-vis vests. Follow their rise and fall. Give me the charred ribcage of a mattress lying unwanted in the scorched circle of a roadside ditch. Give me the slanted rhyme of cars and lorries and electric scooters leaving the estate, that wave of children at 8:30, that school migration, whole hemispheres on the move, Gypsy and Jehovah on the same path. Give me walls of sprayed symbols, a cock and balls, smiley face with tears in its eyes, Stompy 06, the narrow, rushed scribble of a swastika. Give me declarations from the aerosol prophets, BLM, ACAB, up the Ra. Give me the idle ghost of a public house, its sidewalls bold on brick mantra, you are enough. There's a town of endless blocks, a newsagent's under a nail bar, a dental technician with a tarot reading service on the second floor. There's a ring of teens around the Liberty Tree, draped in Adidas and Nike, hooded like an urban Wiccan, spellbound, stationary, hanging suspended from iPhones, scrolling, waiting for a sign. I have seen that sign, a boarded up bedroom window on the Cllr Road, tinfoil under a maybush, a butterfly lighting on a spent firework, a basketball on an empty court, a peace sign almost painted over. And it's there in the reflection of orange street lamps burning in puddles, that sky catch lit match ripple that must be our own heart beating, that must be our own song singing, that's lost, but must be there. Somewhere underneath our concrete skin, somewhere along our shared sidewalks, everywhere our grassy patches with broken goalposts and worn shortcut tracks cut through, everywhere the mind asks, why this place matters.
Thank you so much, Clifton. Powerful images and a wonderful performance, and thank you very, very much. And well done to Carlow Places for commissioning that work. And it was great to hear it the first time. A film has been made of this, and it'll go up online soon. But I think I got a sneak preview of it yesterday in the bar. There was it was playing on the wall, so it may be available at the moment. But keep a look out, and the film will be online soon. Now, we're just about to go into one of our longer sessions. The next one will be 50 minutes long. So if people want to head out now, it would be a good time. Check at registration, which... Now, sorry, I'm not trying to clear the place for you. Fearghus, I'm only giving instructions, Fearghus. Now, I know the next thing will be compelling, but sometimes you just have to do what you're told. Anyhow, what we do want to make sure is that people get to the sessions they want to get to. And Carlow College, if you go over there to the left of the marquee, through two sliding doors, turn left and you're at that one. And as I mentioned to people yesterday, when you go out to the parish hall, you will look at a fence that you can't get over. You actually go out onto the street, out through a little archway, turn right for about 50 or 75 yards, and you will be there. So check out what this lasts to 11:15. And Fearghus, I do sincerely apologise for creating any impression that anybody whatsoever would want to leave. This is our first panel discussion. It's being chaired by Fearghus Ó Conchúir, who will be sitting here, and he's Deputy Chair of the Arts Council. So will you please welcome Fearghus to the stage, while I apologise profusely to him. And if anyone dares leave, you'll have Fearghus to answer to. So. There you go.
I'm going to sit here. Will I sit here? Well, actually, ní mise a gaishtach leis, so it's not me that you're going to be listening to. Really, it's these wonderful panelists that we have here today. So, dóibh siúd há fracht fáilte, is mis Fearghus Ó Conchúir, and it's choreographador me. So yeah, please sit. Yeah, it's choreographador me. So há anhaimagum sa glúiseacht, ach freisin tá saimagum sna struchtúr a chachéan glúiseacht. So I'm a choreographer. And I loved hearing from Maureen that we were talking about choreography in Tuam yesterday. But that means, yes, I'm interested in movement, but I'm also interested in the tangible and intangible infrastructure that supports movement. And when I hear Clifford's poem, I absolutely hear all of that tangible and intangible relationships, buildings, people, people who are here and people who are remote. So fáil to díobh sé freisin a há fechantaring. Welcome to those of you that are watching us as we stream as well. Our place is being made on these multiple different levels. Tógach an Gaeltacht na ringe mis. I was brought up in the ring Gaeltacht agus tá Coney orm I London, so in a big international city, London. Agus tá taithí agam a bheith gobar fud na tíre. I've been working across the country in Ireland. But tógach mé agus is tógach agus mé gairí níos níor bhrachas go raibh an áit níor tógach mé go raibh sé bó le gnám don saoil gur hasla gúmsa a bheith amreachtant. So I was brought up in a place but with an experience that didn't feel it quite fit into the place where I grew up. So as a gay young man, as someone who wanted to be an artist, finding my place in the world is an ongoing work. So that's why I'm very happy to be here today, chairing this panel of brilliant people. So we're going to be building on Valerie's talk, but with Ali Harvey, with Garrett Phelan, with Rita Marcalo, and Tom Dowling, each of whom are going to do a short presentation in a way from very different perspectives, building on what I guess she said a hint. I feel more like a provocation and also a kind of set of aspirations and hopes that we could embody, but building on those to help us think about how it is we can make places matter, build places in different ways, places that are hospitable to a variety of different experiences. After they've spoken, we have until 11:15, so my main job here is to be timekeeper, and we are going to have a conversation. Our plan today is to give you input this morning so that conversations will continue in both the breaks and in the other workshops that are happening later on today. So, forgive us that we won't be speaking to you directly or hearing from you directly this morning, but so I hope that the input that's coming from this conversation will already be stimulating your thinking. So, the first person I'm going to welcome to talk this morning is Ali Harvey, who is the Programme Officer from the Heritage Council.
Thanks very much.
Ali.
Thank you. Okay, good morning. It feels really weird to be back here because, as you say, it's all been Zooms, and I live in County Carlow, so it's so lovely to be here. Okay, so really just to say, it's all about people and place in Ireland. We all, we're all citizens, and our diaspora has really reconnected with our place as well. So places that shape who we are and places that make us who we are. 3 key messages I would like to talk about today: care, collaboration, and democratisation of data. So just to start off by saying that I grew up in the north during the Troubles, and we had wire steel fencing around all our city centres. So at 6 o'clock, the place was just dead. So that really made me realise from a very young age that town centres are organic and that they can actually die. And really what you need is people who care about them and people to get stuck in. So fast forward to 2016 with CARE, Collaborative Town Centre Health Check programme was set up, which I set up with others. And that was due to the demand from business and civic leaders in historic towns around the country. Business leaders came to me in the Heritage Council and said, is there anything that you can do to help? This is 2016, before COVID. They cared, and so did I. The first person to ask me for help was Tara Buckley from RG Data. And in the early years, the call really did come from business and civic leaders, and now the call is coming from local authorities. But the thing was, I had no funding in that first year, so I set up the programme with no money. I think I'm actually mad looking back now. I don't know if I would do it that way again, but anyway, it just shows you if you've got effort and you've got lots of good people around you. So what I did was I went around the country asking the universities and the ITs, would you work with me? People who I knew and people who I also knew that they cared. And that really is the word that I want to use, is care. We have to care about our towns. So the overwhelming response, and I love saying this because it gives me such a buzz from people who I went to and said, look, I've no money, will you work with me? And they said, if it's for the good of the country, I'll do it for free. So yeah, if it's for the good of our country, I'll do it for free. That just gave me hope, and it emboldened me as well to keep going. People who actually cared, who are still in the programme. So we have 15 towns in the programme, we have over 70 partners involved. And those are the people who didn't sit back, and those are the people, Valerie, you talked about this already, the people who didn't put up with the blockers and the blockages. So collaboration, we're going to talk about that a lot today, and this is, my partner Dennis just says that this is all I talk about, collaboration. I think he's actually sick of the word in our house. But anyway, it is something that I believe in, and I've believed in it for a long, long time. So folks, by now, you know what I'm talking about. It says what, it does what it says on the tin, Collaborative Town Centre Health Check Programme. It's all about people, it's all about place and space. And congratulations to the Arts Council for your new policy. So the programme that we set up involves business leaders, civic leaders, local regional authorities, government departments, and crucially, the third level institutes. And I'm delighted to say that IT Carlow actually came on board about 2 months ago, so that's really good. We've also recently set up an Irish Towns Diaspora Network. So the diaspora piled in, as I say, during lockdown. We got lots of messages. I kept getting messages from Japan and Canada, people saying, I really want to help with my town. I've missed my town. The only thing I can do now is see it online. Is there anything I can do? So that is just brilliant. And I mean, obviously that diaspora network, we could, work with the arts community as well. So that is our USP. We work with everybody and we have no egos. It's really, really important to say that collaboration, you can't have egos in collaboration. You just can't. It doesn't work. And just to say as well, we will get absolutely nowhere without collaboration. The first data set that we set up in the first project was actually Tralee. So Moira, I have such fond memories of driving down to Tralee and having dinner with the crew down there. And we had no money, and we published it in August 2017, and then a few months later, Tralee won Most Enterprising Town in Ireland award, so wonderful. And then the next year, Letterkenny, we did that, and it won Most Enterprising Town in Ireland award. I would have loved to have seen Dundalk win in 2019, but the local authority put in Drogheda. So anyway, yeah. Collaboration. Okay, just to move on, the democratisation of data, I mean, it was sort of, I suppose it became really apparent to me more with Tralee, that first project, when we got the vacancy rates. You know, that's why I just kept going, because I thought we have to do something here, and Valerie's presentation just really inspires me further. So thank you, Valerie, for that. So yeah, you're talking about creating data that is of public value. So based on the primary data that we started to gather from 2016 onwards, in 2019 we then put in a policy submission calling for town centres first. The retail vacancy rate in Dundalk, I put in the submission to the Louth County Development Plan, so my background is planning. The vacancy rate was 24%, that's ground floor retail, which is unheard of, and the vacancy rate in Europe is 5%, so you're not actually meant to go above 11. So that really is the rule of thumb in urban economics. So, you know, if you know your town and you look at your ground floor retail, that's really where you start. And then really the upper floors, I mean, without mentioning, you know, you're talking about 80% vacancy. So the second call for Town Centre First came at a workshop that we organised in Dundalk with Scotland's Towns Partnership, an amazing guy, CEO Phil Prentice, who's from Armagh. Again, he's part of the diaspora network now that we've set up. TCF was published in February. Town Centre First, sorry, one of my colleagues said, don't say your three-letter acronyms like you always do. So Town Centres First is TCF. Okay, so that was launched in February 2022, and the CTCHC programme is at the heart of it. In April 22, we will launch the first ever baseline for Tipperary Town. So one of the steps is the land use survey. We've had the civic leaders, the business leaders out walking around the town with us, doing the surveys, doing the mapping. And really what that means is ultimately they own that data. Okay, we don't charge for the data. It is about the democratisation of data. So there's 45 towns on the waiting list, all that pent up energy. I see that as a good thing. That's people wanting to really get stuck in. And I mean, that's really what gets me up in the morning, is working with these kind of people. So, you know, we want to get going. Finally, just want to say I've got phase 2 all ready to go. We've got a building methodology done to do condition surveys, and at the very heart of that is the cultural significance. And again, Valerie, you talked about that. I mean, they're really, like, you know, those towns, those historic town centres have hundreds and hundreds of years of history, shared history, heritage, the stories, the families. I mean, that's, to me, is wonderful, and it's something that we need to rediscover. So I think we need to collaborate. We need to get stuck in. So just to finish off, I just want to say we need to care about our towns, we need to collaborate on our towns, and we need to embrace the democratisation of data. Thank you.
Ali, thank you very much. We will move on straight away to Garrett Phelan. And Garrett, many of you will know, is an artist based in Dublin who I think works across many different media, but I think I know sort of particularly around sculptural installation and independent radio, and who is someone that I always know working in collaboration with place and with people. So to you, Garrett.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Yeah, incredible spaceship venue we're in now. I love visual. It's an amazing space, and thanks very much, Valerie. And I bought your book during the week, and I know I've said it to you loads, but it's a fabulous book. So I'm going to respond to what you were saying kind of very specifically in 2 points, but just to introduce them. I'm an artist. I create work across most platforms. I make sculptures, take photographs, draw, make books, films, animations, and I work with bureaucracy as well. So my work can be hermetic. Sometimes I just need to work on my own, and then my work can involve lots of different people. My work can be made quickly, or it can take a very long time to produce. Behind me here is a project I created and started in 2006, and it's a project that I've committed myself to for my life, and it's called the Hyde Project, and that's the project really I'm choosing to represent myself here today. It's commissioned by Finghal County Council's Arts Department, and when I started the project, it was a Percent for Art project, and when I started the project, my original intention was to work with all departments within the council, and that was the aim of that was to achieve a permanent work of art celebrating the environment and community of Fingal County Council, county, and all of the people within it. So we continue to do this. So it was a challenge for me to challenge the idea of public art, but also the idea to challenge, you know, the bureaucratic institution and the commissioner. So my immediate response from my own perspective as a visual artist in the context of who's in the audience and who we are here today, I wanted to address 2 points. The first being time and the second being the procurement policy. So with time, for me, it's not about the short-term hit, it's about the long-term objective in making a work and situating a work in a gallery or as a big public art commission. With time, I think artists are always associated with giving life and value to dereliction, and to a degree, I take issue with that. I say show commitment to the creative energy of these collectives that go into these derelict environments, not by ending that relationship and selling off these spaces when they become valuable again, usually at the expense of the artist. Artists are not placemakers. I can see that's a position that I have. I don't view us as placemakers. That people might take issue with that, but I think we're not placemakers in terms of being disregarded at a later date, and that is an all too familiar experience for artists and collectives, particularly during recessions. So I say lead, don't follow. Avoid the idea of following or replicating a pattern. Avoid looking outwards to create confidence within. What I mean by that is when redeveloping spaces in towns, approach them by being artist, creative-led. Listen to the artist. Let the creative talent and experience lead. Support and trust that talent. The process might take time, can be difficult, but it's worth it. And truly great things are made this way. Tough to realise, but the returns are enormous and fundamentally meaningful. Bureaucracy is part of governance. Work with it, challenge it, and change it if it needs to be changed. Young creative startups generally cannot tender for the bigger contracts because they cannot achieve office government procurement requirements. Like Valerie was pointing out, you know, getting young architects in to redevelop these spaces is difficult with the procurement policies in place at the moment. They may not have enough staff to meet the requirements of the contract being put out and tendered, or don't create the necessary annual turnover to win the contracts. So you might have a brilliant creative agency, but they just simply can't meet the procurement requirements. So therefore the companies that can meet the criteria simply win, and these may be questionable companies. We've had an issue that's arisen very recently in one of our major institutions, and that organisation that met that criterion, there's many other agencies that could have come in and that but couldn't meet it. Or companies, and these companies that do win the contracts can be void of creative imagination. Yet these are the very things the attributes that we need. So the procurement structure should be redesigned to enable cross-discipline thinking. Artists and artist collectives working in tandem with planners, developers, local authorities, who, for me, it's so essential that the local authorities have open mindsets. The procurement process currently doesn't support that cross-discipline thinking in any manner or form whatsoever. Pay artists, creatives, exactly as you'd pay professional contractors, and ensure that they have the same remuneration stipulations within the frameworks for unseen delays and circumstances. Percent for art has been a useful, welcome initiative. It needs growth and serious development. It is a narrow field. It is a form of obstacle and does not really work. For example, 99% of our projects usually begin at the end of a site development process. I would take a major issue with that. For it to work properly, the artist needs to be part of the master plan conversation at the very start and be present throughout the developmental process. I think that's a huge issue for me working in various public art projects to date, but But like I say, it can be remedied, and that's my little spoke on that.
Garrett, thank you very much again for a thoughtful and typically provocative, usefully provocative. I think building on that artist perspective, I'd like to invite Rita Marcalo. Rita Marcalo to come and speak to us this morning. Rita is another choreographer, so a fellow dance artist, someone who's born in Portugal, but based here now in Clough-Jordan. So over to you, Rita.
I am not from this place. Place, lugar, lieu, luogo. Throughout the 50 years of my life, I have used these words to refer to the place I live in and the place I work in. Now I'm learning to use ot, the word for place in Irish. I am not from this place. So as a choreographer, I ask myself, how do I make place-based work when I am not from that place? Sometimes I answer that question by working with those for whom, like me, belonging to a place is also wrapped up in displacement. Oh, no, that. Borrisokane Dancing was a community integration fund funded project in Borrisokane, Tipperary, my current ot. As soon as I moved to Ireland in 2018, I got involved with a group of locals offering support to 16 refugee families accommodated in Borrisokane. I had previously worked in a refugee camp in Calais in France, so this kind of community involvement just felt like a logical continuation of what I had done in France. So as part of that process, I got to know the children of those families, and the idea of a dance project bringing together newcomers to Borrisokane alongside long-term residents took hold. So 9 young people and I came together and we danced together. First, all of them experienced the dance form that I bring with me, contemporary dance. And then as time went on and trust developed, I began to invite the young people to take on the role of the teacher under my guidance. And so this led to that I, together with a group, experienced Irish dancing, traditional dances from the countries that the refugee participants are from, and we even tried other movement skills brought in by them, such as unicycling, which is really hard. The outcome were a series of online and performative dance films. I am not from this place. Before I continue, I want to say that although I'm here suggesting a parallel between my subject position as a displaced placemaker and the displaced subject position of the young people and their families, I'm acutely aware that mine is wrapped up in privilege in a way that that of most of the youth dancers I worked with is not. I am a white, middle-class, able-bodied, educated to PhD level cis woman, and I acknowledge that my displacement was intentional, easily facilitated by the EU's freedom of movement policy, and has provided me with significant career rewards. I am not from this place. A few months ago, I was invited by academics Yves McGrath and Victoria Dura to enter the Borrisokane Youth Dance Group into a HEA North-South research program funding bid. We just found out that the bid has been successful, but this now means that, the already existing complexities of displaced placemaking embedded into the group will now be played out from within the North-South Ireland context and the discourses of belonging pertaining to that context. Now, once again, this is a context that I cannot claim to understand, and so I, together with the youth dance participants, will have to find a way to negotiate our place, our ought, in that context. I am not from this place. The current model for international touring is one where the question of place is usually reframed from this place to that place. Dance which tours is usually received as dance from that place. But for me, presenting dance internationally as being from Ireland without the acknowledgement of the complexities of what that Irishness would mean, in my case, a Portuguese choreographer with producers from the UK and Ireland, working with dancers from Northern Ireland, Belgium, Denmark, and Portugal. In my case, that would feel like a non-truth. Slow-mo is a Creative Europe-funded dance being presented as part of the Perform Europe programme, touring to Cyprus, Italy, Denmark, Sweden, and UK in May and June this year. Slow-mo is not a dance work. It is a dance concept. It asks residents of the different cities we perform in to send us stories, which we then use to choreograph the work. Each time slow-mo is performed, it is a different work. It is created from the specific stories of the people of that city. So by touring a concept that can be filled in or completed by local people, with slow-mo, I continue to acknowledge my displacement. As a company, Instant Dissident says, we are not from your place, but we're not entirely from Ireland as that place either. All we do is to offer you space for you to bring your place into our work. I am not from this place. Once I was at the pub in Clough in Tipperary when someone explained to me that I was a blow-in, and so many others in the village, which apparently has lots of people from Dublin. But I misheard, and I heard that I was a blowing in the wind, which I loved even more. I am not from this place, but I've chosen it. I often feel like a seed blowing in the wind, sometimes landing here, sometimes landing there. But that seed has now had what I hope its final landing in Tipperary. It is growing roots, and a tiny plant is beginning to emerge. As it emerges, it wants to do so slowly, carefully, and thoughtfully. It wants to take time to observe all the other plants native to the meadow so that as it emerges, it can connect its roots to them underground. It does not want to become a weed which would take over, and it does not want to wither and die. And one day, this plant might feel like it is from this place, but even if that day comes, this will always be a plant which knows it is not native, and it does not want to pretend it is. And it will always have a special affinity with other non-native plants because it understands the precariousness of the process of putting down roots in a place which is not of itself. Coromahagad.
Gurmagats Rita Obligado. So, really, really beautiful to hear. So shifting from that artist perspective back in a way to a local authority perspective, I'm really happy to invite Tom Dowling to speak, who's former CEO of Meath and Carlow County Councils, but also the chair of the Pride of Place initiative. Tom.
Thank you very much. I really wish it was artistic. That was just... and good morning, Cathaoirleach, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here in Visual, particularly as the conference focuses on the recognition that place really matters, and by extension, people and place. And when I was listening to Fintan talking earlier, you could see the passion and pride he has and people at Carlow have in their places. You represent people at Carlow. And then Moira very elegantly spoke about the local authorities, but more importantly about the place art is taking in their place and in every project and initiative taking place. It's really fantastic to hear that. And Valerie, you'll be coming into my thoughts later on. But look, I do want to compliment the Arts Council on its new spatial framework, because I was struck by its commitment to public engagement by promoting and developing a people and place-centred approach to investing in the arts. But I want to talk a little bit about Pride of Place, because Pride of Place actually started in Carlow 20 years ago, and we are now celebrating 20 fantastic years of supporting, mobilising and celebrating community achievements all over the island of Ireland. Throughout the length and breadth of Ireland, people give their personal time, their personal expertise to create a place to be proud of, where each person is celebrated, cherished, respected and included, irrespective of well-being, place of birth, even if they are from Portugal, date of birth and wealth. Great communities recognise they must also nurture their culture, their arts, their heritage and environment, and be proud of their sporting and cultural achievements. These same communities welcome new people from other cultures to their place and are currently doing so. Like all of you, I am deeply saddened by the dreadful situation the people of Ukraine are in. I listen daily to their plight and their angst at leaving their place behind. I'm inspired by their language and kindness and pride in their people and place. But I keep thinking, how would we feel if it was us? Probably selfish, but that's the thoughts go through our heads. Valerie's inspirational talk spoke about the idea of place. And I'm delighted, actually, she chose a video clip of my hometown because I lived just a few steps away from that market square. But also I was amused at the amusement in the hall as she spoke because they were all real people. I was a young child at the time, but I recognised them. I recognised their faces. I understood where they're coming from and the people. And that same place shaped my life. My family were educated in the local schools, had a full social life, participated in community and sporting activities, all run by fantastic volunteers whose commitment as young people we did not appreciate. Or indeed did we appreciate the struggle families and businesses had. But we learned to value the opera. Yes, there was a vibrant opera society in that small town, musicals, drama and play music. We learned about community dignity and respect. And I witnessed that market house being knocked down and the square being destroyed. Valerie spoke about the government policies and papers to support all she was saying, but she also pointed out the need to manage logjams created by regulations. Unfortunately, I understand what she is saying. She has a point. And unless, as she said, we are agile enough to understand different ways to give our places a new lease of life, we will not grasp the incredible opportunities that were never here before to regenerate our towns and make them complete again. If we don't, we may well condemn many of our towns and villages to another generation of decay. But it is no single organisation's fault. All the organisations must play a collaborative role of understanding. We can and should provide much needed new homes in the middle of these towns, but I'm convinced that with a significant investment in our towns and villages now, that they will be more attractive as a place to live. I'm normally an optimistic person, but I do concern myself that we may overpromise and underdeliver, and this can be highly demotivating. And this may well be because of the many issues raised by Valerie, but there's also the unwritten. There's local politics, there's petty objections, there's petty jealousies in many of our towns and villages, and I think we need to recognise that as well and manage them properly and respect everybody's opinion. So funding allocations, in my view, must be based on meaningful community consultation and support. I'm now going to finish up with Pride of Place again, because we must encourage our communities to recognise what is so wonderful, what's so special about their place, why they should be so proud of it, because every place is special, and acknowledge the voluntary work that supports and makes the social and cultural fabric of the town work. That is why pride in one's place is so important. Many of our participants may never win a Tidy Towns competition. They have heart, they have welcome, and are proud of their place and its culture. They might even feature in a pristine Home of the Year competition. But when you visit, you'll want to stay amongst those people, share their warmth, just like a family home surrounded by memories, presented through literature, pictures, stories, song, music, craft. Finally, in our awards, we include a community arts or creative place initiative. And in these categories, we receive the highest number of entries. In addition, every town and village or community our judges visit, because we visit every one of them, a pride of place in these communities is always part demonstrated through their cultural expression of visual and performing art and literature. And thank you very much for listening to me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Rita. Thanks.
Yeah, well, Gurmil Magav Galar, thank you all so much for those reflections and, in a way, building on what Valerie has spoken. We have about 10 minutes to just have a brief conversation, or at least the start of a brief conversation that I hope we will continue over the many sessions through the rest of the day. But in a way, I wanted to maybe ask a question, come back to you first, Valerie, if that's all right. You can take a breath. And one of the things that struck me in your kind of account of the history of towns was actually reminding us that they are contested spaces, or like they have a history of being contested spaces. And it feels that that is an important recognition for us because, just as Tom spoke about, you know, there can be petty objections, sometimes when we think about placemaking, we think about making everything nice and everyone all on the same page and consulting. And actually, that's not the reality of how we live. So I'm just wondering what you think the kind of structures or approaches that we need to be able to, I guess, hold some difference and contest, but in a sort of productive way.
God, that's a very big question, but I'll try and give you my thoughts on it anyway. And I think you're right. The whole idea about towns being slightly contested is probably why we've neglected them a bit. But I do agree with you, Tom, in everything that you're saying, that in fact it's the people who live in the town that are involved in all of the detail of running the GAA club or the football on a Saturday or whatever it is. It's really those kind of initiatives that make a place truly work. But I was very struck by all of the contributions that people made just now, which I think are really important to discuss. As Ali is saying, 80% vacancy above the shop fronts. I mean, that's a huge statistic, but it's also a huge opportunity. I've looked at some of the 2040 Carlow plans, and to be honest, I haven't had enough time to look at them properly, and I may have missed a lot, but it seemed to me that there was a lot about new things happening. And I think one of the things that we miss all the time is the waste capital that exists because we don't use it, like that 80% vacancy above the shop. The whole thing about how to take on those pieces of fabric and use them for the future. I think the best way, and it's going back on what Rita was saying about displacement and working with people who are maybe not of the place, but not wanting to become totally integrated, but at the same time not wanting to be too different either. There's a very subtle balance there, and I think the way that you can, or a way that you can, I think really get involved with helping that become something in a town is that people actually work with it and they begin to take on things like if three families buy 2 tall houses in a town and divide them up between them so that they each get a floor or something like that. That kind of collaboration, going back to what Ali said about collaboration, is absolutely crucial and begins to help people see that, yeah, actually, Joe Soap down the road wasn't too bad when I went to talk to him about such and such a thing. But it is true that, and what I meant about planners, because I've totally believed that what local authorities are doing is based on the absolutely best intentions, and they've done years of work in the recent past about improving our standards of living and improving their visions for towns and villages and cities. And recently we've had the spectacle that housing as a crisis has meant, in a way, just to speak plainly about it, politicians need statistics. So when you turn housing into politics, you end up with statistics, and we have a problem with, say, getting the balance right. So strategic housing development planning, which has happened recently, has taken the power out of the hands of local authorities and put it back in the hands of developers, who will all do their bit, but they will do it to the minimum level. And we have to be realistic about that. We do need them. We need risk takers. We need people to invest money. But we have to make the standards right so that we get back out of it as a community what we want. I was really struck by what Garrett said about not making artists. Artists are not placemakers, and I think that's a really important point, to describe places that are derelict as being places that artists should take on because they'll kind of civilise it and then make it great, and then they can move on and people can come back in and say, great, now that place is worth more. You're so right, and it's something that happens all the time, and it really shouldn't happen. And that's about valuing what people do and how people work. And I think that's the other really crucial thing, is about valuing what artists do, what architects do, what all of us do because we think it's the right thing to do. And it's not based on what you get back out of it, but it's based on a kind of a loose network where we all think we're trying to go in a certain direction, and we've kind of invested in that. And I suppose that's I think, as you say, we do have to work with bureaucracy. We have to find a way around it. We have to do it. But that bureaucracy has to also work with us. And I think that's the message I'd like to send back to people, to say, you know, if you are working in a local authority, well then make a local authority team take on the towns as a kind of a, you might have to take on one town for 3 years or something, and have a team of people, a task force, that are actually dedicated to it and doing something really specific. So in other words, finding out exactly who owns everything and what you can do to assist them in developing things. I was talking in Mount Rath, Tom, recently, and I was just talking about the juggernauts coming around the roundabout, avoiding the motorway tolls, and I was saying, well, who lives in all these houses? And the answer was, one family owns a lot of property here, who were maybe burnt by the crash, bought a lot of property, lost a lot of money, and they will avoid the derelict sites tax that comes in by just installing one person in very poor conditions in each of those houses. And you just think, well, that's not great, but that's the kind of thing that we need to be looking at, because people will do things that are clever to get around regulation that costs them money. So I think we have to be very smart about this and to say, well, if that's the thing that we want to do, if we want to regenerate the centre of a town, we have to know everybody who owns it, everybody who has an interest in it, and we have to work with them to try and build it on to something that we really want. Invest in the people who can come back and live in those places, and then let them do deep energy refits. Let's get those buildings reused again. Deal with fire officers and conservation people in the best possible way, because they all have the right ideas, and it's just a matter of a small adjustment that needs to be made. But it takes incredible amount of talk. So
thank you. Actually, Ali, to come to you on that point, because you were the one that spoke about collaboration, and I'm, in a way, this panel, but also all of the people gathered here today, it's clear all of the different people that will be needed to come into conversation, and people from very different backgrounds, whether it's artists or fire officers or planners or whatever. In your experience, having worked with a variety of different people, who are the translators that can help people kind of speak to each other across their different disciplines?
Well, I mean, the main thing is to get people together, you know, to have workshops, to give them the opportunity to meet each other, you know, and we did that obviously before COVID, and it's been difficult during lockdown to do it on a Zoom. But I mean, we have had workshops with the fire officer, with owners of vacant property through the programme, to try and find out, like, why is your building empty? Like, why, you know, what is the blockage for you? Because a lot of it is about perception and then reality, and there's a mismatch there as well. But I mean, I suppose really what I try to do in the work that I have been doing for many years, I mean, you know, my postgrad was on this, community empowerment. So really what you're trying to do is build up trust. That's fundamentally what you're trying to do, and that takes a lot of time. And so, I mean, sometimes, as Rita was sort of saying, you know, because I come into a town and I'm not from the town, that actually, so I can be that facilitator and that enabler to try and get those people together. And I mean, if I give you the example in Dundalk, you know, there's a Dundalk Business Improvement District, and the manager of Dundalk Bid said to me, I didn't actually know who the planner was for my town centre before you came along. So like that for me, again, there's a lot of things that have happened to me that inspire me, because then I know, right, that's great, we've made those connections. We're doing that collaboration. And that continues, and I mean, I was told about Tralee as well, you know, that those connections continued after I sort of left. I don't have a team yet, so yeah, it's just me running this programme, so I'm very, very busy. But yeah, it is about trust, and also I think, Tom, did you mention it, respect? Like, you know, you have to have respect for people, and you know, sometimes you have to sort of tell people to maybe chill out and go and have a wee walk and come back. You know, I mean, you do have to be respectful, so you know, you have to be aware of that as well. And if, you know, I always say to people in meetings, every idea is on the table. Please do not think that there's no idea you cannot put out there. So that enables, again, and what we do is a rotating chair. So I don't chair the meetings, everybody takes their turn. And that was something that I really felt very strongly about doing when I was setting up the programme, that it wouldn't be seen to be me telling people what to do, that I was there to listen and to build up that trust and that collaboration, which when it works is just amazing.
And I'm just thinking, so maybe just the last question, actually thinking about you, Garrett, in a way. You spoke about, for the example with Fingal and the Public Art Project, trying to work across departments. And in a way, it is a lot about personal relationships. So we're looking at regulatory frameworks, all of those things have to be in place, but ultimately it's also then about the connections.
Yeah, and charming people. Yes. No, and I think, like everything Tom was saying, the whole political situation and how you negotiate that with locals, but even what I found is that the internal politic of a council is incredibly complex within itself. Like departments don't necessarily get on with each other, and that's really interesting in itself, and how that is managed. That was like I went in that particular project with the really utopian idea of how it was all going to work together, you know, and I got a real kind of sense of reality pretty quickly about it. And it's about sticking power, and also that intermediary person, that conduit, that mediator between me and the council, it's a huge job for someone, and it's a really important role that someone has to play within kind of mediating creativity and imagination. I don't mean for this to sound patronising, but I suppose when I come in as an artist into an environment, usually I come in like an alien from space, and everybody's sitting around the boardroom table looking at me like, oh, what's this person doing here? And I think that's what we need to get over. We're not aliens. We need to be able to be respected and communicate, and you know, our opinion is extremely valid in that. So it's a very complex scenario, but it's getting better.
It's getting better, so that's good. Let's take that away. It's getting better. And I think also as an artist, I always remember in those situations that we're service users, we're parents, we're patients, we're whatever. So we are like all of the other people in the room, but maybe with a different set of expertise. I think
just one comment,
very last
comment. I would strongly recommend people go to the, slightly biased here now, the presentation from the Kells group in the afternoon, because they know how to work with their local council. They've brought heritage, arts, and the people of the town together, the business together, and they work and they link in with everybody that's necessary to make their town a better place. Just to say that.
Brilliant recommendation.
Yeah. I hope they're there in the audience now. I'd hate to waste my time recommending.
They're all gone away. We've come to our break time, but our panellists are here, so please come and be in conversation with them over the break, during the day. Hopefully their wonderful contributions will inspire you and your thinking. But most of all, what I'm taking away today is a comfort with a little bit of dissidence and friction, and then the importance of intermediaries as well to kind of navigate those spaces of difference and dissidence. Gur míle mágaibh the panellists, Címis Verbal.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to Fearghal, to Ali, to Valerie, to Tom, to Ruth. There's no person in this room that will ever hear the word blow in again without thinking of you immediately. And Garrett, it's so interesting to think about, as you've explained, getting from very good ideas to good realities, and all of the many things from meeting people to charm, which are essential to getting there. Now, we're taking a short break, and I'll sort of draw attention to two things. 11:30, there are sessions starting in the Carlow College. Sorry, 11:30 in Carlow College, so keep an eye out for that. And in the studio gallery, which is upstairs in this building, when you come in the main and you go up past the wonderful radio installation, it's up there. But could people please be back here for 12, because this is when we go online, and it'd be important that if everyone could try to make it a few early, so we're a few minutes early. And that'll be the Glucksman Gallery and the Cork City Council. So have a break now. I'm sure there's an awful lot people want to talk about, and as I so elegantly put it, now would be a good time to leave. Apologies.
Me gusta la lluvia. cocina, me
Una
gustas
de la
tú.
mañana.
Me gusta camelar, me gustas tú. Me gusta la guitarra, me gustas tú. Me gusta el reggae, me gustas tú. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je ne sais pas. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je ne sais plus. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je suis perdu. ¿Qué horas son, mi corazón? Me gusta la canela, me gustas tú. Me gusta el fuego, me gustas tú. Me gusta menear, me gustas tú. Me gusta La Coruña, me gustas tú. Me gusta Malasaña, me gustas tú. Me gusta la castaña, me gustas tú. Me gusta Guatemala, me gustas tú. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je ne sais pas. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je ne sais plus. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je suis perdu. ¿Qué horas son, mi corazón? ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je ne sais pas. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je ne sais pas. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je suis perdu. ¿Qué horas son, mi corazón? ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je ne sais pas. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je ne sais pas. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je suis perdu. ¿Qué horas son, mi corazón?
Radio Reloj. 5 de la mañana.
No todo lo que es oro brilla. Remedio chino e infalible.
I was born a baby boy a long time ago. Back when the hillsides were green and the water would flow. The nights they fall and settle like snow. I watched as the hillside turned white with nowhere to go. I'm gonna start a fire. Oh, think I'm gonna start a fire. Oh. My heart's a frozen lake where streams used to flow down to the forest of my mind where memory would grow. Now I walk amongst the trees where the last sun glows. The leaves are all golden and brown with nowhere to go. Oh, think I'm gonna start a fire. And oh, think I'm gonna start a fire now. My skin like these boulders is cracking and older with each passing year that goes. My cliff face is crumbling, silently tumbling down to the water below. And if I light a match, I'll be able to catch the last sun before it goes. And I think I'm gonna start a fire. I think I'm gonna start a fire. And I think I'm gonna start a fire now. Turn around, you stay